Hello and welcome to episode 90 of the Thinking LSAT podcast in Los Angeles. I'm Nathan Fox. With me in Washington, D.C. is Ben Olsen. Ben, what's the latest?
I just started reading a book called What Doesn't Kill Us, and it's about how we basically control our environment so much now that we never experience cold or warm. And the idea is that those sort of things, getting cold and then getting hot or whatever, is actually good for you. And it talks about the research that goes into that and what systems are basically becoming dormant, not being used because we never experience cold for more than 2 minutes. You walk to your car and then you make it the perfect temperature and you go home and all that stuff. And there's a whole movement that's going on with it, just like exercise, right? It's like replacing what we used to do as we walked around, and all this stuff. It's pretty interesting. So I started taking cold showers.
Oh shit! Wow, you and Tony Robbins.
Oh, does he do that?
Well, Tony Robbins does the what's your other self-improvement guy that you like?
Well, hold on. I was just about to say that I have a negative impression in my mind of Tony Robbins. I have no idea why. I don't actually know much about it.
I bet you would love it. It's just
really,
yeah, man. It's like personal empowerment,
he's like
self-betterment, very modern, very forward-thinking. I mean, I'm not into it, but to me it seems like a preacher, and so I'm like out.
This guy has people like walk on coals and stuff.
I know.
I think that's garbage.
It's the power of the mind, dude.
Well, anyway, I don't know what impression I've given you, but
I think you should not be a hater. I think you should check it out. I bet he has, it's a conversation between a wise man and a fool anyway. I'm sure you could learn something from him if you saw what he had to say. But no, he does like cold plunges, like every morning kind of thing, like plunge into the, freezing water or whatever because of all of the beneficial effects on your central nervous system and et cetera. So.
See, one of the reasons I like this book is that the guy is going into the research that's been going into it since people have started doing that. And that's what I find interesting. If I was just reading this book and someone was saying, hey, this guy really thinks that you should get in cold water or whatever, I would just think that it's kind of like a lot of other sort of fads out there where everybody jumps on board and says that like doTERRA will heal you in every single way possible because of the essence of this oil, or I don't know. But I like this.
Yeah, you're a skeptic. That's why you're good at the LSAT. For real.
Hopefully.
No, for real. I mean, skeptical thinking is one of the most powerful tools you can have for the LSAT. You have to be able to call bullshit on stuff. So you and I both, when we hear just claims, we immediately want to know what the evidence is to back up those claims. That's just the way we think. When you think that way, then you do well, especially on the logical reasoning, right? You kill the logical reasoning because you're just like, wait, what? What are you trying to tell me here? What's your basis for that? So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of charlatans out there in every field, just people talking about energy and like so much. It's just bullshit all the time. But no, I mean, I bet you would find something in the Tony Robbins shit that you would probably like. Okay,
cool.
Today on the show, we have an action-packed show today. We have so much to talk about. We have a unsurprising bit of news from Yale. We have an announcement that the LSAC is looking for guinea pigs. They actually want to pay you to do some work for them. We have a whole bunch of listener mail, and if we have time, we'll get to a logical reasoning question from the June 2007 test. But first, I wanted to put a little pitch at the top of the show, since we get so many emails from people that are surprised to find out that we have products and services. Believe it or not, Ben and I are both in business. And we have offerings that you can buy. And so, Ben, I wanted to ask you a little bit about your online class, which is a thing and is for sale. And people could buy it right now if they wanted to, right?
That's right. Yeah. So the online class tracks the live class because I record all my lessons as they go. So just last night I had a class, a live class, and I recorded that class and then made that available to the online students. So the online class that I offer is sort of it's sort of like it's happening in real time, right? So every week there's a new set of videos that come up that have to do with whatever we talked about in class this week. And so people can join that class and start preparing for the June test or whatever. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Cool. They sign up through your website, strategyprep.com.
That's right. Yeah, strategyprep.com. And it's just listed there with all the other live classes, but it's listed as the online class, and it's got a schedule and everything. But the reality is, because it's online and whatnot, you can start at any time and just pick up with the first lesson and then go from there.
Cool. Do they get historical lessons too, or do they just like get the lessons for that batch of your live class?
They get both. Yeah, they do get the historical lessons as well. The historical lessons are organized by test, actually. So after I'm done with a lesson, I take all the videos out of it that deal with particular tests, and then I put those into a system that organizes them. And so when they're doing like 35-minute sections or things like that, they can go back and find videos from previous classes, as well as the current one, but previous classes that discussed those questions. And so sometimes, for the harder questions, there's like 6-7 videos just on that one question.
Wow.
Not that they need to watch them all, but sometimes at first I was thinking of like deleting those, and just having the most recent ones or whatever. But people have told me that if a question is particularly difficult, hearing or watching a couple videos from different classes on the same question come at it at like different angles. Different people, different classes have different questions, and the way they talk about it, by the end, they're sort of like, okay, now I feel like I really have my mind wrapped around it. So I've just kept all those old videos.
Well, you're going to do a better job explaining it sometimes than you are other times, right? I mean, sometimes you're going to be off your game, or sometimes you're just going to see a different aspect of the question and do a better job of it.
Yeah, there's definitely that. And it's also like sometimes, the class will seem to get it and they say, yeah. And it's just kind of like, it doesn't make sense to keep elaborating on it. So we just sort of end the discussion. But in other cases, they want to dig into it deeper. So,
yeah. Well, that's cool. So, and I think yours costs the same as mine, right? Did you say it's $1,000, $995?
There's actually two versions. There's one that's $995, and that's for the people who are in the DC area because they can come to get like extra help on Thursdays and to come to the live practice exams. But if they're remote, it's since they can't come to those things, it's $795.
I see. Cool. What if they like have questions, need support, that kind of thing? How do they get in touch with you or?
Yeah, most people just email me specific questions, hey, I'm struggling with this or whatever. It's totally random. But yeah, I'm happy to respond to emails or talk on the phone, but most people end up emailing. So
yeah. Awesome. Okay, so that's Ben's online class. You can find that at strategyprep.com if you're interested. And if you're in some backwater somewhere and you're thinking about taking whatever the bullshit local LSAT class is, you might want to read some reviews of that before you sign up and consider doing an online program. If you like our shit on this podcast, I think you would like our online programs. So check that out.
Yeah.
What do you think about this? Well, we got unsurprising news from Yale, yeah?
So I didn't hear the news, so please let me know.
Well, you'd be shocked to find out that Yale is going to also be accepting the GRE.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, duh.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
They have to, right? Now that the competition is.
Yeah.
So.
Again, makes absolutely no difference for anybody today unless you have this elite GRE score in the bag already, or, you think you can get an elite GRE score and you can't get an elite LSAT score, which really doesn't make any sense. But the GRE is a much easier test to take, because the LSAC hasn't modernized and is only offered 4 times a year. If you, are like some crazy badass at standardized tests, I suppose, then it makes a difference for you too. But again, also only if you're going to just apply to Yale and Harvard, which would be dumb. Mm-hmm. But, as that list of schools expands, it's going to be a much more viable option to take the GRE. So, I guess, Ben, as a full-time LSAT specialist, you're hoping, like I'm hoping, that the LSAT is actually going to fix itself.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how that changes.
Well, to that end, we have a bit of news about the LSAC looking for guinea pigs. I've been seeing this on Twitter. I follow the LSAC on Twitter. Yeah, so participants needed for digital LSAT pilot test on May 20, 2017 in 20 U.S. testing centers. Details at digitallsat.lsac.org. By the way, digital LSAT, there's two L's there, right? Because it's digital and then it's LSAT. Okay, then dot LSAC with a C .org.
Wait, hold on. Say that again.
Digital LSAT.lsac.org.
Dude, that's so funny.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
They're not going to have any other sort of digital thing, so they could just say digital or...
Right. Yeah, they could have just gone digital.lsac.org, or they could have just put it on the front page of lsac.org.
The digital LSAT pilot test.
These people, man. This is what happens when you have no competition. But, now they have competition, so I just hope it doesn't take them 5 years to realize they're going to get their ass kicked.
Yeah.
Here's the deal. As part of our ongoing research into LSAT delivery options for the future, LSAC is conducting a pilot test of a tablet-based LSAT administration system, the digital LSAT.
They have a name. They're so worried about the freaking name, but they haven't even
There's a bunch of fucking lawyers, dude. Product. They're just they're so worried about, the appearance of the whole thing that they're not actually making the thing happen. Anyway, we are seeking a total of 1,000 test takers to participate in the pilot test. Date, May 20. Application period, March 27 through April 15, which I think they had to expand because they, shocker, didn't get enough participants in the first wave. So they had to, I think they broadened it. It says you will need an acceptable photo to upload during the application process. So looks like they're actually, testing the security aspects of it at this point, which that could be a good sign.
Yeah.
Approximately 20 sites across the United States, including Puerto Rico. It's being offered by the LSAC free of charge. It includes actual LSAT questions, but will not result in an LSAT score. Like the LSAT, each pilot test will consist of 5 sections of multiple choice questions, but they will be administered on a tablet. There may also be a writing sample, which the test taker will type using a keyboard attached to the tablet. The digital pilot test will be given under conditions similar to those of an actual LSAT administration, and the timing of the sections will be identical, 35 minutes for each section. The digital LSAT is designed to be accessible to as many individuals with a wide blah, 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 disability, blah, blah, blah.
I wonder if you'll have scrap paper or something. Because, games and stuff,
they're going to need to give scratch paper for sure for the games. Taking the digital LSAT pilot test should help prepare you for taking the actual LSAT. As indicated above, the test questions you will encounter in the digital LSAT pilot test are actual LSAT questions, providing a valuable practice opportunity under realistic test-taking conditions.
Realistic, except for it's digital.
Yeah, and it'll be realistic 10 years from now when we actually implement this. No, there's too much to mock here. In addition, contingent upon your completion of the full pilot test, you will receive a detailed performance report listing the number of questions you answered correctly for each of the 3 LSAT question types and the number answered correctly for each of several skill areas within each LSAT question type.
Ooh.
Your performance report will also contain brief descriptions of all of these skill areas. What? Digital LSAT pilot test results are not LSAT scores and will not be transmitted to law schools. They have to say that 5 times because they're lawyers. And then a $100 gift card will be given to each participant who completes the entire pilot test.
That's kind of funny that they said that last. That seems like that should be up there with the fact that it's free. Anyway, so this is interesting. This part about their analysis of your results.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really curious. Is this just going to be a simple thing where they say, well, it appears that you got 50% of the necessary assumption question types correct? Or are they actually going to, do they have they, I'd be curious how they sort of categorize their questions. We know from the Super Prep books that they talk about necessary assumption, sufficient assumption, and so forth. So I'm guessing they're just going to stick with that.
Yeah, if I was a gambling man, which I am, I would make a bet, even money, that that's what it's going to be, right?
Yeah.
It's just exactly what you said.
Yeah.
Oh, you missed 7 out of 15 necessary assumption questions, and then it's going to be that description from the super prep, blah, 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 about necessary assumption questions. Because what else are they going to do?
Yeah.
They're not going to be in the business of teaching LSAT.
Yeah. Hey, so this reminds me of the podcast some time ago. I can't remember which one it was, where we talked about the newsletter. And in the newsletter, they had talked about doing a digital LSAT, right? Wasn't that in 1999?
Yeah, they've been very slowly creeping up on this, but it is interesting that less than a month after Harvard makes its announcement, then bang, all of a sudden they've got this test going on in 20 different pilot test centers.
No, I mean, that's my point exactly. It's actually worse that they were talking about it in 1999 and apparently didn't do anything about it until, coincidentally, a month after that. Like, that is, I think, proof positive, despite the fact it's just correlation. Wow. This is a good thing. This is what the competition does.
Yeah, it's circumstantial, but of course, common sense, it just stands to reason that if all of a sudden they've got a big competitor just wading into the fray, they're going to all of a sudden have to change up their shit. I do notice here, though, that like the fact that it's a tablet base, like they're I wish they were just doing this through the testing centers that already exist.
I don't understand that. I was thinking the same thing. It's going to be a lot easier. That's what you're ultimately going to have to integrate it into anyways, I would assume. That's at least the most efficient way to get it out there and distribute it. They're going to buy a bunch of tablets? That's ridiculous.
I'm thinking they're not going to. I'm just thinking they're gonna modernize to the least of their they're gonna slightly dip a toe in the water.
Maybe they're trying to keep end-to-end control, just like...
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. They want to keep 100% of the money if they can, which is kind of a dumb business plan. But, it's worked for them for a long time, right? I mean, they just print money. I mean, the amount of money they make off of just selling the tests alone is outrageous, but the amount of money that they make off of the test administration, the amount they make off of the credential assembly service, it's crazy how much money students end up paying the LSAC.
Yeah.
So I'm not a hater, right? I can't blame them for making money, but it's bad for the students that this thing is not available at all of the testing centers that already exist. I mean, I don't know why they wouldn't just go into all the testing centers where you can already take the GMAT and the GRE and whatever, you know, NCLEX and just a zillion tests that you can take at these testing centers that are specifically designed, and that's all they do all day is administer tests.
Yeah, and they're set up for scheduling people to come in.
Instead, they end up hiring just, random people to be the proctors at their own test centers that they administer. Anyway, hey, maybe this all turns out a lot better than we think. I just can't imagine, because the tablets don't exist at these testing centers.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're speculating, so we should probably just move on. But that's the big news. And again, I don't know. I wish we got to get our listeners to go do this.
Yeah, we do. So here's the deal. If you're shooting for June, you're going to take it on May 20th. So that's a couple Saturdays before.
Yeah.
And I wonder how long it will take them to give you their analysis of your results. But either way, hey, it's one more test. Doesn't hurt to get a little experience.
Yeah, it's going to be real LSAT questions. Yeah, do it. May 20th at 20 sites across the United States. Again, you go to digital.lsac.org to find out more about this and to register. But boy, that would be awesome if our listeners crowded into those testing centers and gave us all a report.
Yes.
We will be very appreciative if you guys do that.
They're seeking 1,000 test takers. What percentage of those test takers do you think we can nab? 10%?
We should be able to get, if everybody that's listening did it, which they all should, we should be able to, crowd the testing centers. That'd be excellent. Anyway, if you are available, you should check out those testing centers. Oh, does it have a list of all the testing centers? Because we could provide that helpful information.
Well, we do know that it's in 20 states. Which states is unknown?
20 sites.
Oh, 20 sites.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. Test center locations. Okay. Lakeland, Florida. Glen Ellen, Illinois. Evanston, Illinois. Bloomington, Indiana. Newton, Mass. Springfield, Mass. Albuquerque, New Mexico. North Las Vegas, Nevada. Flushing, New York. Columbus, Ohio. Norman, Oklahoma. Eugene, Oregon. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Puerto Rico, Puerto Rico. What? That's probably San Juan, Puerto Rico. Memphis, Tennessee. San Antonio, Texas. Houston, Texas. Richmond, Virginia, Madison, Wisconsin, and La Crosse, Wisconsin. So what's the closest there to Richmond, Virginia?
Yeah, I think so. That's interesting. DC, I think, is the biggest city when it comes to LSAT test takers in the world, and they failed to find a place in DC.
Well, California is the biggest state for test takers for sure, and they don't have a testing center in California at all. Well, whatever, it's a pilot test, and they're doing it in maybe places that are a little bit more affordable for whatever reason. They did it in places where the rooms are cheaper maybe, and maybe the labor's a little bit cheaper. It makes sense. Well, I mean, why would they test it in San Francisco or Los Angeles or DC if they, there's just a pilot. So they're doing it in Norman, Oklahoma instead.
Yeah. Cool.
This is all, it looks like all of them at universities.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And yeah, the navigation, of course, the LSAC website, it just sucks, but the navigation is up in the upper left if you're looking for that navigation link.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can totally sign up and they'll give you a $100 gift card for the LSAC website. Probably for the LSAC web store where you can buy yourself like a LSAT mug. No, I don't know. Who knows? It's probably Amazon. Okay, cool. Anyways, that's good. This is great news. I mean, as much as we're mocking the LSAC, we love to poke fun. They're our favorites, and they're making some progress here, so that's good.
Yeah.
Let's see. What else do we want to talk about? Oh, if you would like to, we're getting a lot of emails these days, Ben. But if people want to email the show, they can email help@thinkinglsat.com, and we will add your email to the agenda. You can also tweet me at Infox, tweet Ben at Strategy Prep, or tweet the show at ThinkingLSAT. Lots of ways to get in touch with us, and we would love to help you with your LSAT issues.
Hey, random side note on emails. Sure. Can you always tell that an email that you're about to open has to do with the podcast? I feel like I can always tell, like something about the subject line. It doesn't have to say podcast. It's just something about the subject line. I'm like, oh, this is for the podcast.
Yeah, I do have a pretty good suspicion when it comes in. What is that? Why is that?
I don't know. Something about like they tend to be long, I think, and they tend to have a fair amount of detail. I don't know. But it seems like every time I'm like, ooh, that looks like a podcast email. And lo and behold, it is.
Yeah. I don't know what that is.
Oh, here we go. Here's an example. Question and an unrestrained ramble. Apologies in advance. It's like, oh.
Yeah, that's immediately a podcast. Probably because we go on so many unrestrained rambles on the show.
That's right.
No, the emails we get are I find them entertaining, and I find them very, they're like so appreciative and respectful all the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like they act like we're so much more important than we actually are. So I get a nice little ego boost every time, and it's always people just like thanking us and apologizing for being long-winded. Doesn't keep them from being long-winded. They just apologize for being long-winded. Should we dive in here?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, let's see. We should take turns. Why don't you read the first one?
Sure.
Okay.
Hi, Ben and Nathan. Please use a different name. Okay. Sarah. First, love the podcast. I also listen to it at work. Awesome. Current dilemma. I'm thinking about taking the June LSAT. Right now it is April, the very beginning of April, so we have a couple months here, to see if I might get me off some of the wait lists that I've been placed on, and perhaps get me some more money at the schools that I've been accepted to. I haven't really heard of anyone doing this until I was looking up ways to get off wait lists. Desperation. And this idea seemed to have a lot of proponents.
That was in the email. That wasn't Ben editorial.
Yeah, sorry. It did,
It did say desperation in the email. In
thank you. I kind of felt that nervous all of a sudden too. I'm not that cruel. Okay, so this is a thing for sure. If your LSAT score goes up, they may become more interested in you. Let's see here. So background, took Ben's class back in August, took the September LSAT, scored horribly low, 152, and realized that I hadn't worked as hard as I thought I had. After much despair, I took Ben's advice more seriously and basically drilled 35-minute sections and took the December LSAT. When I got my score back, I was so elated that it was 10 points higher, 162. I promptly sent in my applications next week and haven't looked back until now. Been waitlisted at several T30 schools and have 2 offers from lower schools with good money. I visited some of the schools I've been waitlisted at and really liked them, and think one in particular would be a good fit for me. So in desperation to get off these waitlists, I'm now considering taking the June LSAT. Yep. I figure there's nothing bad that could happen since I'm planning on attending this fall anyway, and in the unlikely situation I score really high, I could wait another year to apply. The only thing is I have no idea if I can do better on the LSAT. My practice scores were higher, yes, but the unseen game really seems to kill me on both the September and the December LSAT. So she's talking about the games that seem unusual in the sense that they haven't been, there's not been a game like them before. Okay. In December, I missed 3 questions in reading comp, 4 in the first logical reasoning, and 8 exclamation point in the second, and 7 in the games. I always seem to do better on the first logical reasoning section, and I'm not sure if they make one section easier or if I'm not as mentally sharp at that point that I get to it. Mm-hmm. Plus, I haven't thought about it, the LSAT, in months, so I would definitely have to get back into it. I mean, I think she said it. She said, I figure there's nothing bad that could happen since I'm planning on attending this fall anyway. I don't think there's any downside to taking it, even despite all these concerns. What do you think?
They're not going to unadmit her.
Nope.
And it's possible that it puts her in a better negotiating position. You know, she probably doesn't want to do the work, which I don't blame her for. She's already admitted to a bunch of schools and has scholarships and all that shit. And she's, but if it's in the back of her mind that she thinks she can do better, and she did have higher practice scores, mm-hmm. then I think she's definitely worrying about some things here that are not a thing. It's not a thing. The quote unseen game is not a thing. All 4 of the games are unseen games. They are all, you have to improvise on the games. So the games are going to be slightly different every time. And if you get good enough at the games, it feels like you've seen them even if they are something that's brand new. Mm-hmm. I guess there were a couple of curveballs in the last year or two but even those curveballs I don't know. I've complained about this a lot, but they're just not that hard. I'm sorry. They're not that hard. It's just that people panic. So, maybe now that she's seen those curveballs, she will be able to cope with it. By the way, she missed 7 in the games anyway, so she can only go up from that, right? It sounds like if it's one game that's causing her problems, well, even if that happened again, she'd just miss 7 in the games again.
Yeah, and if she did better in the other sections or whatever, then great. And if she doesn't get that, quote, unseen game, then great. Yeah. Now all of a sudden she wins. I mean, here's the calculus. If you do better, you've now won immensely because you'll probably get off those wait lists or maybe even get money from other schools that didn't give you money before. Yeah. And if your score goes down, you just say, well, forget it. I'm just going to press forward with what I've got, which is the exact same situation you're in right now. So there's only an upside here. There's no downside.
The downside is just the work, the time, the effort, whatever. I like it actually because I think it puts her in a good negotiating position, right? I'm sure these schools are like telling her that they want deposits and everything else, but she could just be like, listen, I have all these offers. I know I can do better on the LSAT. I'm registered for the June LSAT. And if you really want me, I mean, she's not going to say it like that, but that would be her stance, though, right? That's actually how she feels is, hey, if you really want me, you're going to wait for this June LSAT score. And when this June LSAT score comes in, you're probably going to have to give me more money. So instead of you, hammering on me to start paying deposits, more like, no, I'm not paying your deposits. And if you want to take away my offer, that's fine. I have a million other offers. Mm-hmm. And when I get this June LSAT score back, I'm going to have even better offers. So, I'm in the driver's seat here.
Yeah.
The other thing that she's worried about that's not a thing is whether one logical reasoning section is harder than the other. Half the class thinks the first section is harder and half the class thinks the second section is harder, and it's all relative, and I don't think that's a thing that you need to be worrying about. In fact, I'm sure worrying about it is not helping you at all.
Mm-hmm.
I am sure you're going off of small samples here. Students always, they like to look at the last 3 tests and go, oh, I always do worse on the first logical reasoning, or, oh, I always do worse on the second logical reasoning. And it's like, okay, it's just that you're seeing trends where trends do not actually exist.
Mm-hmm.
When she says she missed 4 on one of the logical reasoning sections and 8 on the other logical reasoning section, I look at that and say, oh, so you missed 6 per section on logical reasoning, which isn't great. And she could do better. I think you could just get better at logical reasoning.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I don't think it has to do with mental sharpness. I think it has to do with, hey, why did you miss those questions you missed?
Mm-hmm.
So the first place for her to dig in, if she hasn't already done it, is she needs to get that December test out and her score report out and look at those 12 logical reasoning questions that she missed and be really honest about why she's missing them.
Yeah.
It's not mental sharpness. It's not one section harder than the other. It's you're not as good at logical reasoning as you should be. Because some people get to a point where they just don't miss any in logical reasoning, or they miss 1 or 2 in logical reasoning. Mm-hmm. And so I would, if she's only missing 3 on reading comp, that's like putting her in a potentially kind of elite range, right? And why not work on your logical reasoning skills and your game skills? Clearly she needs to work on both before the retake in June. But I don't think it would take her more than, like we always say, an hour a day, games and logical reasoning, maybe do games one day and logical reasoning the next, and just go back and forth and get yourself in shape. It's only 2 months till the June exam. Yeah, I mean, knock it out of the park potentially.
The other thing to keep in mind here, and hopefully this is true for Sarah as well, but a lot of people who are in this position where they're sort of taking the LSAT to make things better, but they don't necessarily have to take the LSAT. They've done decently well and they're just trying to get a little better, or hopefully a lot better, but whatever. The pressure is sort of off. And so I hear from them pretty frequently, I should say. They say, hey, look, there's no stress here, there's no pressure. And so I actually can kind of sort of get into the test, and I'm having fun learning about the test now, as opposed to before where I felt like I had to do this and I had to do well. Now I can actually think about these games and think about the logic behind them. And ironically, as I do that, now I become better and at the same time seem to have some fun.
Yeah, it's upside. It's the bonus level, at the end of the phase or whatever. She can just get extra bonus points here for fun, and worst case scenario, she just keeps the offers that she already has.
Yeah.
So could be worth it. I mean, for 2 months worth of an hour a day, and it can potentially totally change your life or save you $150,000 or whatever.
Yeah. Take that and divide it by the number of hours you expect to put in.
Seriously. Yeah. And give yourself a probabilistic chance. Like, let's say you only have a 25% chance.
Sure.
But if it's a 25% chance of $150,000 and you're going to spend a total of about 60 hours, let's say, I don't want to do the math.
It's all right, I got a calculator.
Okay.
So 150,000 times 25% chance, that's going to give you $37,000.
Yeah, divided by 60.
$37.50. Wait, what?
Divided by 60 hours? Oh, plus
divided by 60
a day
hours.
for the test, so make it like 66 hours.
Sure, 66. That's $568 an hour. So
of expected value.
Expected value.
Yeah, if she actually gets it, then it's like...
Well, times 4.
$2,200 an hour, yeah.
$2,200 an hour, yep.
If she actually gets it. But at the expected value, an economist would say that you got a $500-something expected value there, $500 an hour. That's more money than you're going to make as a lawyer, so...
Yeah, some lawyers do better than that. But so unless you're making that already and your time should be devoted to that, actually, you shouldn't even be listening to this podcast. So go do something else if you're already making that. Otherwise, every time you sit down and study for an hour, you're doing that. And the reality is everyone should do this calculation, right?
Yeah.
When you're thinking about taking a class or whatever, I know that's self-serving, but even if you get a small scholarship, right? Like what are some pretty common small scholarships? $10,000 a year, something like that.
Sure.
So $30,000, and let's say that the class increases your likelihood of getting that by some percentage, right? So let's say you have a 25% chance
Yeah.
now of getting that again. So multiply that by 25. You get $7,500. Divide that by, let's say you study for 12 weeks. That's $600 a week that you're expected to earn.
Yeah. By the way, if this conversation about expected value EV calculations is bewildering you, you should really find some resources and learn about expected value. It's a very powerful economic concept. Very, very useful. One of the most useful things I would say that I ever learned in college.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Say, yeah, it's like the one thing that has practical application beyond the 4 years that you're there.
Right. Yeah, totally. Okay. Thanks, Sarah. Do it and write us back and let us know how much more money you got. Hi, guys. I love the podcast. It has proven to be very helpful in terms of supplementing my self-studying for the June LSAT. It's also a great way to make my workday less monotonous and boring. As an aside, you guys once said you found it funny how people listen to your podcast while at work. Ben mentioned that he always wondered what types of work people do while listening to the podcast. To answer Ben's question, I work at an e-commerce company filing claims against freight carriers for any lost or damaged merchandise. Cool. All of what I do at my job revolves around the Federal Carmack Amendment. In order to determine liability of a carrier, I need to retrieve and review the legally binding documents, such as a bill of lading and delivery receipt. That sounds fascinating. The main reason I'm reaching out to you is because I just finished taking my first full-length timed practice exam since my diagnostic exam back in January. Whoa, that's a long time between exams. I scored a 155 on this exam. My diagnostic exam was a 145. Despite the fact that a 155 is not a stellar score, I am encouraged by the fact that I was able to make a 10-point increase since my diagnostic. Yeah, awesome. I'm registered for the June LSAT, which is now a little more than 2 months away. Given that both of you work with students on a regular basis, I feel that you would have some helpful insight in terms of whether or not it seems plausible to be scoring in the low 160s by June. Yes.
For sure.
Okay, next email. No, I don't know. Absolutely, you're on the way there, and 160. Yeah, from 155 to 161 is just, that happens all the time. I am and always have been a diehard Bostonian. I am a student at Northeastern University, one of my alma mater. Northeastern, did you know that? I have a degree.
No, I didn't know that.
I have a degree. I have a master's degree in journalism from Northeastern University.
Oh, the life you could have lived.
Yeah. Yeah, the glorious, illustrious life of a reporter. I did have a press pass, briefly, a press pass to Fenway Park, and it was kind of fun. But also I realized almost immediately that I did not want to be a baseball reporter for all my life. I'm a student at Northeastern University, and I intend to apply to 3 law schools in Boston, one of which is Northeastern. I can tell you what the other 2 are. That's going to be BU and BC. In terms of the other 2 schools, my score of a 155 on today's practice exam would put me above the 75th percentile for both GPA and LSAT score. That said, Northeastern's median score is a 161. Holy shit, really? Man, I think Northeastern used to be like a kind of like way down in the rankings law school. If their median is now 161, they've come up a lot. Anyway, 161 median at Northeastern, according to this correspondent. While I'm on the dot for their median GPA, 3.5, a 155 would put me in their lower 25th percentile for LSAT score. Yeah. Ideally, I'd like to hit between a 160 and a 163 on the June exam. A score such as this one would make me an even more competitive candidate for scholarships, which we talk about it all the time, right? Specific numerical goals. If they can help you to motivate, that's good, but how did he pick out 160 to 163? Why not 164 or 165? So I don't know how those arbitrary numbers just always kind of.
Well, isn't he just basing it off of Northeastern's median score?
Or their 75th percent? Maybe their 75th is 164 or something. I don't know. Who knows? For the remaining time I have left before the June LSAT, I plan to do time sections and thorough review afterward. Good. Given these numbers, what are your thoughts on a 5 to 7 point score increase? Have you seen such an increase in the last 2 months before the exam?
Yes, for sure. I would do some numbers here. I'd say he has I mean, who knows? We don't know a whole lot about Eric, but a 70% chance of getting 5 to 7 points between now and the June LSAT, and probably a 50% chance or a 30 to 50% chance for getting above that, like 10 points, 165-ish.
I would give him a really good shot. I would give him an even better shot if he got a little bit of help. I mean, it's self-serving to say this, but boy, people that are scoring 155, there's a lot of things they don't understand about the test. And, you know, he doesn't say if he did a class. He doesn't say if he read any books. I'd be interested in what his best section is. I'd be interested in what his worst section is. And in a tutoring session, you know, even I do 2-hour tutoring sessions, but even in a 2-hour tutoring session, I almost guarantee that I would blow this guy's mind with some stuff about the test that he would just, like, he's just not thinking about it in the right way. Like you could do it. I could do it. We could look at his mistakes and we could just be like, hey man, you know, the reason why you missed this one is because I'm pretty sure you don't understand XYZ. It's almost guaranteed that he doesn't understand the difference between sufficient and necessary assumptions. In a 2-hour tutoring session, we could diagnose the mistakes he's making, and we would pretty easily be able to say, here's 5 things that are going to, you know, totally change your perception.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. It's interesting. I just met with someone the other day. Just a brief, like, hey, I'll talk to you for a little bit to see if I can help you. A free, you know, brief consult. And this person was reading the question stem first, right? And I said, well, okay, I know a lot of people do that and they talk about that, but I would strongly suggest doing it the other way. And the first thing he said was, well, that's how I started, because he was actually working out of the PowerScore book, so I was a little surprised that he was doing that, because the PowerScore books say to read the passage first. And I said, well, so that's what you did at first? And he's like, and that didn't work for me. And so now I read the question stem first. And I said, okay, well, why didn't it work for you? And he said, well, I read the passage, and then I would read the question, and I would forget what I had read in the passage, so I'd have to read the passage again. So I was just reading the passage twice. Now if I read the question, then I can just read the passage once. And I said, wait a second here. You forgot what you read in the passage? That means you're not reading it as well as you could. And he wasn't really convinced. I was trying to just persuade him of this. So I said, okay, look, let's do a question together. And he pulled out a question that he struggled with, and as everyone does, it's the first question out of his mouth was, okay, look, this is a question I was struggling with. I want to talk about answers. No. I think it was B and D. Nope. And I said, I don't want to talk about B and D. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we're not talking about B and D. We're talking about the argument. The reason why you missed it is that you don't understand the argument.
So I go through the argument, and this is the other thing, and I think this is the part of the reason he was resistant, and maybe some of our listeners are still resistant to this idea. Hopefully not by now, if you've been listening for a while. But he said, "Look, when I read it before, and I forgot what the passage said, I was reading it really carefully." And that's where I said, "Wait, I don't think you're reading it really carefully if you don't even remember it, because you need to read the sentence, you need to stop and think about what it means and react to it and so forth and yada, yada, yada." So then we start going through this question together, and I said, okay, read the first sentence, and he read it, and then I was like, well, what do you think of that? And he's like, I get it. And I said, okay, well, what does it mean? Like, what is it saying? And he just quoted it back to me, as they always do. And I'm like, okay, I still don't know if you really get this or if you just like think you get it. And so we kind of talked about, it was a formal logic question. We talked about, hey, look, there's like a group of people and most of them are doing this and the other ones may or may not be doing that. He's like, okay, yeah. I mean, I understood that. Okay. So finally we get through all the sentences, which are all formal logic and kind of heavy, and it's like, you understand this now, right? Inside and out. He's like, yeah, I get it. And so then we look at his 2 answer choices and he's like, oh yeah, that's obviously wrong. And I'm just like, yes, of course. We don't even need to sit here and talk about these answer choices because now you understand the passage. So I don't know why I got off on that tangent, but I was thinking about this, like this short session that I had with this random guy who I think was finally convinced by the end that there is value in sort of really owning the passage. Yeah. But I think about how many people out there are scoring 155 or 165 or whatever, and are they really doing that? Do they really get it? Do they have to like engage with these sentences on such a level that they own them inside and out? Because so many people say, yes, I'm reading really carefully. Right. And they think that's what we mean. Like, I get what you're saying, read carefully, and I am. Yeah. And that's not what we're saying.
one thing that we do for a living, right? We do this in our classes and we do this in tutoring, is we just demonstrate the proper method for doing a question. And it's amazing how often people just go, "Hey, I want to do number 15," because I'm stuck between B and D and I don't get it. I just like, got to talk about 15 particularly. I really want to talk about B and D. And then I read the argument. Mm-hmm. All I do is read it. And then they go, "Oh, never mind." I totally get it now.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, because when you hear like the inflection in my voice, you hear the skepticism probably when I get to the conclusion, or you hear me emphasize certain words because I can tell that they've switched terms, or they've left something out, or they've said something that's kind of bullshit or whatever. And it's amazing that I can just see the light bulbs going on, like, oh man. And it's amazing because it's so much easier than the students are making it out to be. Mm-hmm. They get down into those answer choices, or they get so caught up in the question stem and the answer choices that they're playing this game that's just this weird arcane, it's like, of course it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense because you didn't make sense of the argument first. Mm-hmm. That's the reason why you got off on that tangent, is that this is one of many like mind-blowing kinds of moments that we have with students. Mm-hmm. So, again, like, talk about doing that expected value analysis for somebody like Eric, who's really trying to get into Northeastern, or even get scholarships at Northeastern, or scholarships at these other two schools that he's applying to. If he spent $500 or $1,000 on tutoring and had like a couple sessions, the chances of him getting 5 points out of those sessions, it's not guaranteed at all. But those 5 points could be worth tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Of course, it's self-serving to say this, but that's why we're able to charge what we're able to charge, is because the value that people get out of it is just enormous. Mm-hmm. Again, not everybody. I do say pretty regularly that if you're unhappy with the tutoring session, I'm happy to give you your money back.
Yeah.
Like I'd be surprised after a tutoring session if somebody was like, well, first of all, no one's ever said it, but if someone said, that was bullshit, I didn't get anything out of it, I'd just be like, oh, well, yep. I'm really sorry you feel that way. But more often than not, we uncover 4 or 5 areas of confusion, and all of a sudden you walk away just thinking like, oh, wow, the test is, wow, it's so easy. Yeah, it is. And especially when you're at 155, I mean, there's a lot of easy stuff between 155 and 161. Mm-hmm. That said, I like the plan of doing timed sections and review. It sounds like Eric has been listening faithfully to the podcast and taking our advice. So I give Eric, very good odds of reaching his goal if he continues to work diligently.
Yeah. Keep it up.
Next one, go ahead.
Sure. So, hey guys, for the last month or so, I've been meaning to start studying for the June, or more realistically, September test. Okay. But have been procrastinating / nervous to take a diagnostic. Okay, I'm just going to stop right there. I don't know what the rest of this email says, but if you're nervous about taking a practice test that is not going to account for anything officially, I think you're thinking about the test in the wrong way. You're thinking about it as like a self-assessment or a test of your self-worth or something like that. There's nothing wrong with taking a test, getting a bunch of questions wrong, and just diving in and being like, okay, this is what I suck at. Now let me fix it. That's the fastest way to get better.
You want a metaphor?
Go for it.
Yeah, it's like my car won't start, but I'm nervous to like take it into the shop so that they can see what's wrong with it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, oh, I'd rather just continue to have it be a piece of shit and not, I'm going to read books about it or something.
Sure.
But I'm not going to just go like get it taken care of.
Yeah.
A diagnostic test, I mean, no matter how low you score on the first day of class or on your first diagnostic test, the point is not to like prescribe, here's what your entire future is going to look like. It's not.
Yeah.
I see results on the first day of class where I'm like, oof, this is going to be an uphill battle.
Sure.
But that doesn't mean you can't do it. And I do see people, once in a while, people improve by 30 points or something and have this like earth-shattering amount of improvement. So no matter how low you score on your first diagnostic, you can still get to law school. But until you do that diagnostic, you just have no concept of where you're at or what kind of work you should even be doing.
Yeah.
he could be a lot higher or a lot lower than he thinks he is, and people put it off for a month or 2 months or 6 months, and like, man, just do it.
Yeah. If you're ever feeling nervous, you're probably thinking about the test in the wrong way.
Yeah.
It's just a way to figure out where you're at and figure out what you need to work on. In fact, getting questions wrong is often a good thing because it focuses you on what you suck at, and then you can start fixing it.
Yeah, it's a game, and you're going to suck at a game the first time you play it. So what? You play it, you lose, you try again.
Yeah. Ooh, I think that's almost even a better analogy, right? Like, no one hesitates to play some video game. They're like, oh, well, I only got to level 1.
Yeah, I died immediately. I fell off a cliff. Oh, no. Or like, yeah, it's totally like reading a book about Super Mario Brothers before you play Super Mario Brothers. What?
Yeah. So he goes on, I've never seen any sort of LSAT question and was worried that my diagnostic score would be so low there'd be no way to get my score up. This weekend, I had 12 hours of driving to do, and my brother-in-law suggested listening to some early episodes of your podcast. Wow, thanks, brother-in-law.
Yeah.
To get your feet wet. After the first leg of my journey, I took a diagnostic and scored a 154. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, terrible. Forget it. I'm done.
Yeah. Well, way to go. After some analysis, I found that I had one section where I guessed particularly good. I'd guess my true score was closer to 150-ish. Hey, that's good. Just think of this thing as like random numbers anyways. I was pleasantly surprised with this score and am now motivated to keep studying and taking practice tests. So for anyone else out there, take a lesson from Ted here. What if you're procrastinating your day of joy, right? So go ahead and take it. Anyways, some of those early episodes I went back and listened to. I took some of the fear out of the test and gave me some basic test rules. I have already used some of your tips while studying and recommended the podcast to a few people. I'm a big procrastinator, and it was your podcast that got the ball rolling on my test prep. Looking forward to listening to more discussions in the coming months.
Nice.
Wow. Well, this is actually a great story. I'm sorry I went off on that tangent for a long time.
No, that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Good job, Ted.
Yeah, thanks, Ted. Thanks, Ted's brother-in-law. Thanks, everybody who writes us and says nice things. I mean, even if you don't have a question, we do appreciate, the feedback and the encouragement to keep to keep going, to keep doing this. Especially now, we've been doing it every week, so it does take some work on our part, and it makes it worth it when we get emails like this. If you really want to help us, by the way, especially if you're like on a $0 budget but you feel like you want to give back to the show, if you go into iTunes and leave us a rating and maybe write us a review, that definitely helps people find us. If you tell a friend, I mean, that's even better. If you post it to your pre-law association at your school, I mean, we really, really appreciate stuff like that. So if you've got a website, or if you've got a social media account, whatever you're doing out there for LSAT prep, if you want to throw in a little shout out to the Thinking LSAT podcast, one, you'll probably find some other people that are listening to it. Two, you might be able to turn it on for some other folks, and we would really, really appreciate that.
The one idea I liked too was that one guy who's now teaching at Kaplan said he was going to write it on the board on the first day of class.
Yeah.
Well, I'm assuming most of our listeners aren't teachers, but hey, you could raise your hand in class if you're taking an LSAT class and be like, hey, I've been hearing some really good advice on the Thinking LSAT podcast, and I guarantee you.
Yeah, raise your hand in a Kaplan class and go, hey, I heard on the Thinking LSAT podcast that reading the question stem first is bullshit.
Yeah, that would be much appreciated. That would be one way of paying us back for sure.
Yeah.
By the way, the other thing that's encouraging is the number of downloads, right? You said the other day that they were going up or something.
Yeah, we continue to, partially because our back catalog is growing.
Yeah.
Though we get very limited podcast stats because we really don't know what we're doing, frankly. We started this, almost 3 years ago, and we have very little idea what we're doing. We just kind of threw the thing up there and saw if it would stick or not, and it did stick. But we see some data, and we know that March we had more downloads. March of 2017 was our biggest month ever for downloads for the show. So yeah, we love it when we see those numbers go up and we get some motivation from that. And you can definitely help the numbers. Yeah, write it up on the whiteboard at your in your class. Just go write Thinking LSAT podcast on the whiteboard before everybody gets there.
No one will know.
Yeah. You're the first one in the room, and it says big on the board, Thinking LSAT podcast. Well, you have to get there early, write it on the board, and then like go to the bathroom or something.
Yeah, leave and then come back in and be like, oh, what's that?
Yeah, and then when you walk in, you go, oh, the Thinking LSAT podcast? Cool. Wow, someone else is listening to that? Yeah, it's great, isn't it?
Very good. Very good.
Okay. Thanks, Ted. Thanks, Ted's brother-in-law. Next one says, hi, I am planning to take the June LSAT, and I have been, quote, practicing since mid-January. I took my first practice test and got a 142. I have been listening to your podcast and have started practicing more and more. I am self-studying because, unfortunately, I can't afford any courses. My goal is to reach between 160 to 167. Okay, that's, that happens. 142 to mid 160s, a 20-point improvement. It's less than 50% of the time.
Oh yeah, it's not unreasonable, but it's also not likely.
Yeah, I mean it's you can totally do it. It's just that the average person, if there were 100 of you, less than 50 of you would make it.
For sure. Yeah.
Since listening to you, I have done a complete 180 on my study plan and started practicing more and more instead of following with a book and no practice. Listening to your strategies made me realize I was doing the wrong thing, and now I'm anxious I may not have enough time to study and reach a good score to start this fall. Wait, what?
Huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
We've said this a million times on the show. If you're planning to take the June LSAT, unless you have already been admitted, like what's her name, Sarah, unless you've already been admitted, you should really not be going to law school this fall. You should not be taking the June LSAT. I mean, you shouldn't even be taking the February LSAT and going to school in the same year. You're right on time for the 2018 admission cycle. Mm-hmm. If you're thinking of taking the June LSAT for the first time, that's perfect, because you can take the June LSAT and apply in the fall for the following fall admission.
Yeah, and if the June LSAT doesn't help you reach your goals, then you can fall back to September and still apply early. So this is the perfect time for next fall, not this fall.
And the reason we do that is because when we apply early in the cycle, we get better offers of admission and we get better scholarship offers. When we apply late in the cycle, we get into shitty schools with shitty scholarship offers. And boy, if you're taking the June LSAT, that is incredibly late in the cycle. So the worst thing that could happen here is you get a mediocre score and get admitted to a mediocre school and pay just crazy amounts of money for it. Mm-hmm. And that's a disaster. So, if you're not ready for June, you shouldn't take it in June. And you should just take it in September and use December as a backup. But you should be applying for fall of 2018 admission. And by the way, if you're going to apply for fall of 2018 admission, you want to get your application in this fall, 2017, if you can.
Yeah.
Or if you take the December LSAT, then you have to get your application in January of 2018 for 2018 admission. But that's like the latest that really I'm comfortable with. I hate when people apply later than that.
Yeah.
One exception to that is people who are going on like a GI Bill type of a deal.
Okay.
Because GI Bill, if you're going on one of these deals where they're going to pay for 3 years of school no matter where you go,
yeah,
then at that point it might just be like, hey, I'm just trying to get into my local law school because they're going to pay me, the government's going to pay the tuition and the government's going to pay my living expenses and I don't give a shit. So if that's you, then fine. Yeah. But for all other test takers, you really need to be applying early in the cycle, not late.
Yeah.
Okay, I need some tips into what I can do to improve my score. My weakest section was LR with only 9 correct. I would love any additional tips you may have. There's a lot there, It's not like we're going to just give some LR tips and you're going to magically go from 9 correct to 19 correct. You need to study the shit out of logical reasoning.
Yeah, well, it seems like step number 1 is probably try to get 9 out of 10 or 5 out of 5.
Yeah.
Right? Who knows how many questions she's doing here, but my guess is that she has attempted like 20, if not all of them.
Right. That's what most people do. They attempt 20 questions, 25 questions, and they get 9 correct, and they just, oh, I don't understand what's going on. Okay, well, to get 9 correct, you don't even need to attempt 9 questions. You could get 7 out of the first 7 and then randomly guess on the rest of the section, and you should be able to get 10 or 11 correct.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, slow down, focus on accuracy. We could, give out those intermediate targets again. You need to be getting 5 out of the first 5. If you're not, you don't understand what you're doing. You're just not reading carefully enough.
Mm-hmm.
5 out of the first 5, 9 out of the first 10. And once you can do that, then you can get 14 out of the first 15, 13 or 14 or 15 out of the first 15. And then randomly guess on the rest of the section, and you're going to already be at 15 points or more on the section.
Yeah.
Which is a dramatic improvement from 9 correct. So slow down, focus on the earlier, easier ones is step 1 if you're only getting 9 correct.
She's also self-studying because of her financial situation, right? So I would just say, hey, go back to all the episodes in which we talked about an LR question and just work through all of those one at a time, do it yourself, and then listen to our discussion of it. That would get you through a ton of different question types, the most fundamental strategies, which we were just talking about for the last person. I think that'd be huge.
I have a website. I have a page of free resources. If you go to foxlsat.com/free, you'll find my free resources page. Ben, I know you have a ton of free resources on your website as well. That's what, strategyprep.com/something?
It's actually the best is just strategyprep.com, and there's a link that says free.
So there's free resources on my site. There's free resources on Ben's site. There's 150 hours probably of the podcast that you can go back and listen to. One thing to as just like a cautionary tale here for Jen is like, it sounds, Jen, as if you are maybe underestimating the importance of this test and how much work other people are putting in. It says she's been practicing since mid-January, which is great, but it sounds like she hasn't listened to that much of the podcast actually, based on kind of her questions. So yeah, I mean, we do have listeners who have listened to like every episode of the podcast more than once, and where there are crazy people out there who have done every test, all 80 of the practiced LSATs 3 times, and we know it's hard to do with work and everything else, but just why push for the June LSAT if you're not going to be ready, and why especially push for 2017 admission, because you're definitely not ready for that.
Yeah. By the way, I should just clarify that the people who are taking all 80 tests 3 times are Christopher Walken crazy.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, it's insane. You don't need to do if you do every question 3 times, I mean, that's just like masochism. It's also very lawyerly of you. I mean, that is that is a lawyer. It's not a lawyer, and lawyers aren't not crazy, like they are. So work enthusiasts, that's what we're looking for, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Rest of her email, is this realistic goal, 160 to 167, by the June exam, considering I had an initial score of 142? I think I can reach it, considering I took my practice test from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. after an overwhelming day at work, and my concentration was just not there. I'm planning to take another full-length practice test this Saturday, all refreshed, and I am rooting to try and get a score closer to the 150s. Sure, I mean, yeah, one data point, 142, especially if you took it at night after work. Okay, yeah, fine. Sure. You could have done better, I'm sure. And if you take another test and you score 152 on Saturday, then that makes it a lot more reasonable that 2 months will get you to 160.
Yeah.
All that said, if 2 months of studying gets you to 160, imagine what more studying would have gotten you.
Yeah, this is why she needs to shoot for June to keep the momentum, fire on. Yeah. But then just to have a backup plan for September. And maybe she doesn't take it in June if she doesn't get close to what she wants to get to by that time. But I think she can make a decent amount of progress and then maybe end up taking it in September.
Yeah, but to be clear, do not take it in June unless you think you're going to get the highest score you're capable of. Right? And if you don't think you have reached your potential, then just don't take it in June.
Well, I think that's a little stronger than what it sounds, right? Like,
I don't know, man. I'm worried that she's going to end up selling herself short here.
I think sometimes people might take that as like, oh, well, my potential is really high. I think if you've made a lot of progress and you're close to a score that you'd be happy with, I would consider taking it, especially if it's your first time, because then you can get an official score on record, and that can be sort of like an anchor to push you forward to the next test.
Yeah.
Sometimes people might, I think people could interpret what you just said and take it too far and never take the test. Like, oh, I'm, I could always do better.
Right. If I don't get 180, then I'm not going to take the test. No, I mean, that's not what I'm saying. But I just, people like aren't, a lot of times, especially people like at this level, are just not realistic enough.
Sure.
And I just worry that you don't know what you're up against here. You don't know what you're getting yourself into. And so I would be very concerned if, she practices and she gets her score up to 151 and she's just like, well, I'm going to take it. And she just takes it and gets a 148 and then applies to some shitty school and pays full price. And it's like, that's just you're setting yourself up for just a major fail.
I would say in her case, if she got up to like 158 or something like around that range, then it might be worth shooting for and taking it, even though she hasn't hit 160 yet.
I mean, how about this? Do you have a number where it's like I know it's obviously a curve and it's obviously probabilistic, but what's the number where you are kind of cringing when people go to law school? Like, what number do you wish people had, or they didn't go to law school? If you had to pick one number, which I know is kind of ridiculous.
I would say that, I haven't thought about that a whole lot, but I think, okay, this is just the number that's in my gut.
Yep.
And I'm thinking like anything lower than a 155, I'm starting to get nervous about the quality of school and what that person's plans are.
Yeah. And by the way, we both know successful lawyers who scored under 155.
Yep.
I've got students who went from a 130 something to a 149 and ended up going to law school and being successful, starting their own law firm and being fine, with a mountain of debt, of course. But they really wanted to be a lawyer, and the mountain of debt was worth it, and they actually made it, But some of these people took the bar 4 times.
Wow.
But they made it, That's a success story. But for every one of those who went to law school with a 149, I can point you to 10 people who went to law school with a 149 who didn't make it.
Yeah.
Who either didn't make it through law school, or didn't make it past the bar exam, or made it past the bar exam somehow but didn't get a job, or they did get a job but they only practiced for a year or two and hated it and quit. And all of these people have mountains of debt. And so I like Ben's 155. I was actually, the number that was in my mind was 160. And again, I of course, I know tons of students, I have tons of people who went to law school successfully with a score in the 150s. And don't accuse me of elitism, because that is not what this is. This is trying to help people avoid a potentially crippling financial decision.
Yeah.
I've thought about this a lot. I've thought about this more than anyone else except for probably Ben. Right? I mean,
who didn't start thinking about it until 5 seconds ago?
No, not the number, but I mean, just this issue, like the moral quandary that we're in, right? Because we've been doing this for a decade, and it's very difficult, and we struggle with it all the time. Whether most people, especially in the 140s, but even in the 150s, and sometimes even in the 160s, should be going to law school.
Yeah.
Because I know plenty of washouts who scored in the 160s as well.
Yeah. We're talking final score here. We're not talking starting score. So don't panic if you're like, oh, I've never gotten 155, so I'm done.
Thank you. Yeah, and I don't give a shit about the starting score. And I've seen plenty of people make it from 142 to 162, and that's you can end up getting a full ride with a 162.
Yeah.
And so I'm not talking about your starting score. I'm talking about your official LSAT score, your highest official LSAT score, the one that you're going to apply to law school with.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a 155, just realize that both Ben and I are gritting our teeth, kind of cringing, oh boy, what kind of an investment are you making here?
Yeah, you really have to come to the table and say, well, look, I'm going to this law school with this score, and my plan is to do this, and I'm going to go and work at this firm because I know that all I need is this JD from this school or whatever. When people start talking like that, I think, oh, okay, well, you know more about the situation than I do, so go right ahead. But if it's just sort of like, well, this is what I got, and now I'm going to start applying and see what happens, it's like, hey.
Yeah, it's just like, man, you're setting yourself up to get totally ripped off by these law schools because they're sharks, they're out there to get your tuition dollars. And yeah, I know they believe in their educational mission, blah, blah, blah. But the truth is that, less than half of the people who graduate are ending up practicing law successfully.
Yeah.
So how good of a bet is this for you if you're barely squeaking into the school in the first place and paying full price? Anyway, sorry. Yeah. I know we always end up going dark like this.
I was just thinking of our tagline. It's like the Thinking LSAT podcast. The place for upbeat, motivational.
Yeah. A former student of mine sent me a mug that she had printed that said Fox. It's got my Fox LSAT logo on it, and then the tagline on the bottom is just "Don't go to law school." That's what it says. Yeah,
that's good.
Anyway, big fan of you guys, Jen. Thanks, Jen. We're a big fan of you too, and I'm sorry if I'm being a little bit stern, but you asked for advice, and I want to give the best, most honest advice. You want to do the next one?
Sure. I'm a new listener to your podcast and wanted to respond to the student from episode 87 who wanted to go to law school so they could be a lobbyist in their state legislature.
Oh, yeah, I like this one. This is a good email.
Cool. They do not have to be a lawyer for that. I am a lobbyist in my state legislature as a non-lawyer for a lawyer association, and half the lobbyists I work with are also not lawyers. This is absolutely a wonderful job. Okay, cool. I only paused because I was wondering if it's so wonderful, why is she going to law school? Maybe we'll find out.
Yeah.
And one for which a law degree is not needed. If that is truly the student's interest, I suggest they focus on networking, taking on policy-focused work, and having informational interviews with the lobbyists they know rather than pursue a law degree. Cool. If they want to do law work in interim, that is, of course, a consideration, but there are many options for intern work that pay well, are fulfilling, and do not require taking 3 years out of your career and going into lots of debt. I, unfortunately, do have to go to law school because I want to be a litigator. Okay, there we go.
Yep.
I am taking the June LSAT. My diagnostic was a 159. Wow, nice work.
Yep.
And my goal is 175. Very precise. My concern is that my scores are currently inconsistent. I've gotten as high as 171, but sometimes still get in the mid 160s. Do you have any tips on how to increase my consistency and eke out those last few points over the next 2 months? I do not have a good option to retake it in September because it conflicts with a wedding I must attend.
That makes me laugh. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Wow, this is a serious wedding. That range, mid 160s to 171 is a totally normal range. That's 6 points, maybe, and that's a very typical fluctuation. She's probably somewhere in the high 160s. Do you have any tips on how to increase my consistency?
Yeah, there's no such thing as consistency. You can move up your average, but you're never going to get really consistent until you peg it, right? If you start scoring 178, then that makes, that's consistent. But even people who score in the low 170s fairly regularly still have plus or minus quite a lot, almost always.
Sure. Well, one problem, just to clarify, is as you go up in your score, 1 point can be as much, or one raw score point. So if you miss question 17, for example,
that's an LSAT point. Yeah,
that can be a whole LSAT point, or sometimes in the 170s range, that can be 2 LSAT points. So that's somewhat explains the volatility. I think what she's asking then, I guess, is how can I increase, or what she maybe needs to ask is how can I increase that range so that my lows are more like the high 160s and my highs are more like the high 170s. In which case, I sound like a broken record, but I think just focusing on accuracy and understanding, truly understanding whatever you're reading, that's where all these problems occur.
Yeah.
I think sometimes what people are not letting themselves do is when they get down to two answer choices, right? And they're like, oh, it's either A or D. And let's assume for a second that they've done everything that they should have up front. So they really understand the passage. And this is actually a pretty close question. The answer choices are pretty closely worded and they're tempting and they both seem pretty good. I get the feeling that sometimes people kind of throw in the towel. Like they say, like, okay, I understand the passage. I'm down to A and D, and these are really close, and it seems like D. And there's something that they don't like about D, but they don't let themselves sort of double down because of that qualm. It's like a small voice in their head saying, wait a sec, what about the word only?
Yeah.
There's a problem with that word only. And they don't let themselves like reevaluate, say, okay, hold on. I don't like this answer. Is there something I'm missing? Let me look at the other answer again or something. At some point, you got to throw in the towel. But I think that people aren't letting themselves really think through everything that their mind is trying to tell them.
Yeah. It's about truly, deeply understanding your mistakes. So to double down on Ben's advice, even I bet when Anita scored her 171, she was like having a party, right? She's just like, yes, awesome, best score. And that's good, fine, pat yourself on the back, that's awesome. But what about the 10 that you missed though?
Yeah.
Because you missed 10 on that test. And those 10 that you missed, those are problems. Those are things you don't understand. And they also probably indicate that there were 5 others that you kind of narrowed it down and got it right, but you weren't really exactly sure why. So I would be focusing on the mistakes always. Just look at the mistakes. And especially at that level, it's possible that you're not going to be able to figure it out on your own. So, get a study partner, get a book, or get a tutor for a session or two, and just see if we can make a dramatic difference for you.
Yeah.
I know I'm doing a lot of selling this episode, but like I'm a true believer, man. I know that we can make a big difference for people. Mm-hmm. So rather than thinking about your inconsistency, you should be shooting higher and you should be thinking about the ones you missed. It's the eking out the last few points that's the important thing. It's not the consistency thing.
Yeah.
Because what she's consistently doing is she's consistently missing at least 10 questions every single test. Mm-hmm. Right? 171 is her highest, and she's scoring in the mid-160s. That means she's missing between 10 and 20 on every test. Mm-hmm. And so every one of those ones that she misses, that's a good opportunity to try to learn. Study partner, books, tutor, do it. Figure them out, and really figure them out so that you actually understand them.
Yeah.
I just had to comment. I really liked the wedding bit about this email. Because, like what we were just talking about at the top of the show with the LSAT being and being a dinosaur.
Yeah.
This is exactly the reason why, they need to update the test. It's so silly that Anita's whole life and career is, going to be affected by the fact that the LSAT is only offered 4 times a year, and one of these dates in September happens to overlap with a wedding that she has to attend.
Yeah.
And I mean, who knows what the wedding could be, her sister or her daughter or like her best friend, or a million things that she credibly has to go to.
Yeah.
and then it's like, oh no, sorry, the LSAT. You're screwed. You have to wait another year to go to law school because of that. It's so silly.
It is silly.
Yeah. I mean, it won't be, this won't be happening in time for Anita to benefit, but hopefully, a year from now, we'll be having some good news about the LSAT modernizing and being able to take the test continuously. For now, it's looking like Anita just needs to knock it out of the park in June. And if she doesn't, you got December as a backup, and I suppose you could always just wait another year to go to law school.
Yeah, and December is still a good test for it. I mean, it's not great, but it's not like February,
It's not late. It's not late like February is.
Yeah.
It's not early. And Levine always says get your applications in by Thanksgiving if you want to apply, quote, early. So that's why Anita is wanting to take the June, and then she wishes she could use September as a backup, but alas, she has a conflict. Okay, time for one question from June 2007.
Yeah.
So we'll do one logical reasoning question and then we'll wrap it up. This is from the June 2007 LSAT. You can download that and you can turn to section 3 and you can try question number 22 on your own. Pause now if you'd like to do that question on your own and then hear our analysis. If the price it pays for coffee beans continues to increase, the coffee shop will have to increase its prices. Okay, we have conditional reasoning.
Yep.
If the price continues to increase, which we don't know whether that's going to happen or not, but if it does, then the coffee shop will have to increase its prices. In that case, either the coffee shop will begin selling non-coffee products or its coffee sales will decrease. So we don't know which one of those, but one of those two things are going to happen. Either they'll begin selling non-coffee products or its coffee sales will decrease. One of those things will happen for sure.
Yeah, so the nice thing about this is that although this is conditional reasoning, and I think that some people would instantly feel like the need to diagram.
Oh no.
I don't necessarily have a problem with that, but in this case, I really don't feel like you need to because it flows so easily, right?
Yeah.
Like you can just see this in your mind. If this price goes up, then they'll have to increase its prices, in which case you'll have to do one of these two things. It's just like a flow. And just if you understand it, just leave it at that.
Yeah, you're the manager of the coffee shop and you're looking at the price for coffee beans going up and you're like, man, if this keeps going up, we're going to have to either start selling other shit, tea? Mm-hmm. Or our coffee sales are going to decrease.
Yep.
Okay, I got it. And I would definitely not diagram. I don't like to diagram logical reasoning unless I have to in order to understand the argument. I think people waste time diagramming. I think they also confuse themselves a lot when they start doing all the abstraction of diagramming. So I would skip it unless you really have to do it.
Yeah.
Okay. But selling non-coffee products will decrease the coffee shop's overall profitability. Moreover, the coffee shop can avoid a decrease in overall profitability only if its coffee sales do not decrease. Ooh, that's a little nasty one there. It's a lot simpler than what it reads, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all that last sentence says, it says, moreover, the coffee shop can avoid a decrease in overall profitability only if its coffee sales do not decrease. And what that means is basically, if you think about the contrapositive of that, it's just, hey, if the coffee sales go down, then our profits are going to go down.
Yep.
So, this whole thing boils down to, if coffee beans go up, we're going to have to raise our prices. And in that case, we're going to start selling other shit, which will decrease our profitability, or our coffee sales will decrease, which will also decrease our profitability.
Yep. So if that price goes up, we're going to have problems.
If the price for coffee beans goes up, you can put all this together before you even read the question stem. You can put all this together to correctly, logically conclude that if the price for coffee beans continues to increase, then our profitability is going to decrease.
And let's clarify that is a conditional statement. We have no idea whether these negative things will happen because we have no idea whether the price for coffee beans will go up.
Yeah. Our conclusion here is conditional. If the price goes up for coffee beans, then our profits are going to go down. And the basic pattern here is just, if this first thing happens, then we're going to have either A or B. And both A and B would decrease our profitability. So if this first thing happens, which is the price for coffee beans goes up, we go down path A or we go down path B, but either way, we lose profits.
Yep.
Okay.
Cool.
Which one of the following statements follows logically from the statements above? What type of question is that?
So that's a must be true question. The phrase follows logically means that the statement that you're about to read is a statement that must follow, in other words, must be true, given the statement above.
Yeah, and it's not just those two words that make that a must be true question stem. Because if they had said, which one of the following, if assumed, would follow logically from the statements above, something like that. They use the word follows logically in a sufficient assumption question all the time. That's all I'm trying to say.
Sorry. By saying that phrase means must be true, I just meant that literally. Not that it means it's a must be true question.
Yeah.
And in a sufficient assumption question, it means that too, right? Because it's basically saying, which one of the following, if assumed, allows for the conclusion to follow logically? What they're telling you is the conclusion now is something that must be true. And so Yeah.
But here they don't mention anything about the conclusion. They don't say anything about if assumed.
Yep.
Or if true or anything like that. So this is just which one of the following statements, so of the 5, which one of these follows logically, i.e. must be true?
Yep.
I already know the answer, right? I mean, the answer's got to be what we said.
Yeah. Or the contrapositive, right?
Okay, so I already said if the price it pays for coffee beans goes up, then our profitability, overall profitability, is going to decrease.
Yep.
And you say the contrapositive of that, which is?
If the profitability doesn't decrease, then the price must not have gone up for the coffee beans.
I suppose they could also say something like if our profit goes up, then the price for coffee beans must not have gone up.
Sure. Yeah.
Because that would follow a lot. That if our profits went up, then they didn't go down. But yeah, the contrapositive is if the profits don't go down, then the coffee prices didn't go up.
Yep.
Cool. A, if the coffee shop's overall profitability decreases, the price it pays for coffee beans will have continued to increase.
Oh, that's flipped.
That's close, but that is the LSAT's most common flaw. That is a fucked up contrapositive. I've been teaching it that way in class. It's awesome. They love it. Yeah. It's true though. The sufficient necessary flaw, all that is just a fucked up contrapositive. And if they didn't do the contrapositive correctly, that is the sufficient necessary flaw, and that's what A is doing.
Just to clarify, we predicted if X then Y, and this is saying if Y then X.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Right. Okay. B. If the coffee shop's overall profitability decreases, either I would stop reading that one.
Yeah, we can stop right there because again, it's starting with the necessary condition as if it were the sufficient condition. So it doesn't matter what they say.
Yeah. C. The coffee shop's overall profitability will decrease if the price it pays for coffee beans continues to increase.
That was our prediction. And notice what they tried to do here.
Yeah.
This is the simplest trick in the book, and it's stupid, but some people fall for it. And that is that they put the if clause at the end of the sentence rather than the beginning. And for whatever reason, sometimes people read this as if the profitability decreases, blah, blah, blah. And that would be wrong.
Right. We stopped reading B immediately when it said if the coffee shop's overall profitability decreases. We said, no. We need then the overall profitability will decrease. So we can stop reading B. C does start with the overall profitability decreasing, but then it says if the price it pays continues to increase. So you could rearrange C. If the price it pays for coffee beans continues to increase, the coffee shop's overall profitability will decrease.
Yep.
That's exactly what we said. And the answer for number 22 is going to be C.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's just quickly do D and E. D, the price it pays for coffee beans cannot decrease without the coffee shop's overall profitability also decreasing. Wait, what? No, it was if the price went up for coffee beans, then that was going to decrease our profitability. So D's totally opposite, and it doesn't even make sense. E, either the price it pays for coffee beans will continue to increase, or the coffee shop's coffee sales will increase. We don't know that.
No.
This whole thing was conditional on here's what happens if the price for coffee beans continues to increase.
Yep.
But we have no idea what happens if that doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't know what will happen to our coffee sales if the price for coffee beans does not continue to increase.
Yeah.
Cool. So number 22C. Not a hard question if you take the time to, put the pieces of the puzzle together.
Yeah.
It's a pretty technical question, I suppose, right? It's conditional reasoning, and it's got the, if A, then B or C, if B or C, then D. So therefore, if A, then D. It's also got the weird only if in the last sentence, so that makes it a little tough.
Yeah, I think that's the only thing. Well, not the only thing, but I think that's the hardest part of this passage. And I suspect some people probably read that, glossed over it, and just said, okay, let me look at the answers. And unfortunately, that's the key.
You mean the only if in the last sentence?
Yeah. I think the last sentence, the way it's not just the only if, it's the fact that they worded it with avoid a decrease, right? A double negative. The coffee shop can avoid a decrease in overall profitability only if its coffee sales do not decrease.
That's another double negative.
Yeah.
Do not decrease.
Do not decrease. Yeah.
Do not go down. Yeah.
So if that gave you any trouble, that's one that you want to read through until you can get your mind wrapped around it. One shortcut is to remember that the only if is going to introduce the then clause or the necessary condition. So if you're feeling lost in the words, just remember that everything that comes before the only if is if, and everything that comes after the only if is then. So
yeah, and one way you can remember that is you could draw an arrow through the only if. Have you ever seen people do that?
Sure. Yeah.
I do it on the board sometimes. Write only if, and then just draw a conditional arrow right through it, pointing to the thing on the right side of the only if. So here, coffee sales do not decrease is the necessary condition, and the thing that came before that is the sufficient.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Well, we ended on a highly technical note. Anything else you want to add to today's show?
No, I feel like we covered a lot. It was good.
Yeah, we did. Thank you very much for all of your letters. Sorry we didn't get to everybody, but we will put your letters on our agenda. That was episode number 90. Ben, only 10 more to go before we get to the big episode 100.
Yeah.
Listeners need to give us some suggestions about what we should do for episode 100.
Oh, I know the last thing we need to say here. That 100 reminded me. We need people to sign up for this digital LSAT and then let us know. Yeah, we want to know how many people we can get. We should have a goal or something of like 100 people.
Yeah, 100. Wow, that's a stretch goal. That's good. I like the way you think, Ben. Ben's thinking big. Go to digitallsac.org.
Yeah.
Yeah, or whatever. It's on Twitter and everything. You can find the links to the digital LSAT, but it's free. It's on May 20th. Actually, they'll give you $100 to do it. And you go get some LSAT practice in. So I'm definitely, I was going to say I would tell my students about it. They're in California. How far is it to, what was it, Richmond, Virginia?
Yeah, Richmond I think is like 2.5 hours. It's not bad.
Some of your kids might want to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, why not? Okay, cool. Thanks for listening, and we will talk to you soon.
See you then.